The massive alien space station floated in the darkness like a crystal mountain made of light and metal. Commander James Harrison pressed his face against the small window of his ship, watching it grow bigger as they got closer. His hands were sweaty and his heart beat fast in his chest. "Are you scared, sir?" asked Lieutenant Emma Walsh. She sat next to him, reading her notes again and again. The papers in her hands shook a little. "Not scared. Just careful," James said. But inside he felt worried. The reports from Earth said the aliens thought humans were not important. They thought humans were like children playing with toys. The alien station was huge. It looked like someone had built a city in space, with towers that glowed and moved like they were alive. James had never seen anything so big or so strange. His ship, the UES Prometheus, looked tiny next to it. Inside the station, 3 different types of aliens sat around a large table. The room was made of crystal that sang when the wind touched it. Everything glowed with soft blue light. The first aliens looked like they were made of electricity. They had no real bodies, just bright energy that moved and changed shape. They called themselves the Ethereals. When they talked, their voices sounded like music mixed with static from a broken radio. The second type of aliens were the crystallines. They looked like walking diamonds, tall and sharp, with faces that had no expression. When they moved, they made sounds like wind chimes. Their leader was called Elder Shardek, and he was the biggest and most sparkly of them all. The third group scared James the most, even though he had only seen pictures. They were called the hive minds. They looked like giant insects with 6 arms and 4 eyes. But the scary part was that they all thought the same thoughts at the same time. They were like one big brain split into many bodies. Their leader was Hive Commander Vextar, whose voice sounded like clicking and scratching. "So these are the humans," Vextar said, his 4 eyes looking at pictures of human cities. "They are very new to space travel. Very primitive." "Yes," agreed Elder Shardek, his crystal body making tiny bell sounds. "Look at this. They build churches. They pray to invisible beings they call gods. They think these gods can help them." The ethereals flickered with what looked like laughter. "How strange. We stopped believing in imaginary friends millions of years ago. These humans still talk to beings that do not exist." Vextar clicked his mandibles together. "Our scientists studied their brain patterns. When humans pray, their minds really believe someone is listening. They think their gods are real." "Fascinating," said Elder Shardek. "Their evolution stopped too early. They cannot tell the difference between real and pretend." The 3 alien leaders looked at each other. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had seen many young species try to join the galactic community. Most were smart enough to give up their old beliefs and learn from their betters. "What should we do with them?" asked the ethereal leader, whose name was too complex for human tongues to say. "We test them," Vextar decided. "If they are smart, they will give up their fantasies and serve us. If they are stupid, we will teach them their place." Elder Shardek's crystal body rang like a bell. "Agreed. We will take one of their colony worlds. If they fight, we will show them how weak they really are. If they surrender, maybe we can use them as workers." The ethereals pulsed with approval. "Perfect. Let us see if their invisible gods can save them from real power." None of the aliens noticed something strange happening in the room. The air seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot ground. The crystal walls made a very soft humming sound that was almost too quiet to hear. For just a moment, the temperature in the room dropped by 1 degree. But the aliens were too busy planning to notice these tiny changes. Back on the human ship, James and Emma sat in a small meeting room with the other human diplomats. They were preparing for their first official meeting with the Galactic Council. "Remember," said Ambassador Robert Chin, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, "we are here to make friends, not enemies. These aliens are much older and more advanced than us. We need to show respect." Dr. Sarah Williams, a scientist who studied alien behavior, nodded. "The reports say they find our religious beliefs amusing. They think prayer and faith are signs of weakness." "Let them think that," said James quietly. "They do not understand what it means when humans say they walk with God." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean, sir?" James smiled, but his eyes looked serious. "They think our faith makes us weak. They have never seen what happens when humans truly believe they are not alone." The meeting was scheduled for the next day. None of the humans knew that the aliens had already decided their fate. They planned to take the Kepler system, which had 2 million human colonists living on 3 different planets. As the human ship docked with the alien station, both sides prepared for a conversation that would change everything. The aliens expected to meet a primitive species that would bow down to superior technology and wisdom. The humans came ready to represent their species with dignity and faith. Neither side understood what was really about to happen. 3 days had passed since the first meeting, and Ambassador Robert Chen walked through the long hallways of the alien station once more. His shoes made soft clicking sounds on the crystal floor. Behind him, Dr. Sarah Williams and Lieutenant Emma Walsh followed closely, their faces serious and worried. The hallways were beautiful but cold. The walls glowed with soft light that changed colors as they walked. Strange symbols moved across the surfaces like living writing. Emma shivered, not from cold but from fear. "Remember what we discussed," Robert whispered to his team. "Stay calm no matter what they say." They entered the great council chamber where the 3 alien species waited. The room was even bigger than before, with a ceiling so high it disappeared in the darkness above. The alien leaders sat on platforms that floated in the air, looking down at the humans like judges. Hive Commander Vextar spoke first. His voice was sharp and cutting like breaking glass. "Humans, we have made a decision about your species." Robert stepped forward and bowed slightly. "We are honored to hear your wisdom." "Wisdom, yes," said Elder Shardek, his crystal body ringing like bells. "We have studied your kind for many cycles. You show promise in some areas. Your technology is crude but improving. Your mathematics are basic but correct." The ethereal leader pulsed with bright colors. "However, we found something very concerning about your species." "What concerns you about us?" Robert asked, though he already suspected what was coming. Vextar's 4 eyes focused on Robert like laser beams. "You waste your mental energy on fantasies. You pray to beings that do not exist. You build temples to worship nothing. This is the behavior of children, not adults." Sarah felt her cheeks burn with anger, but she kept quiet. Emma's hands made small fists at her sides. "Our faith is not fantasy," Robert said carefully. "It is the most important part of who we are as humans." All 3 alien leaders made sounds that might have been laughter. The ethereals flickered like broken lights. The crystallines rang like wind chimes in a storm. The hive minds clicked and scratched with hundreds of voices. "Exactly our point," said Elder Shardek. "You believe invisible friends will help you solve problems. This shows your brains have not developed properly. We have decided to help you grow up," announced Vextar. "We will take control of your Kepler system. The colonies there will become our testing ground." Robert's face went pale. "Kepler has 2 million human civilians. Families. Children. They will be safe if you cooperate," the ethereal leader said, its voice like music played backwards. "This is a learning experience. You must understand that in the real universe, there are no gods to save you. Your imaginary friends cannot protect Kepler colony," Vextar added with what sounded like cruel joy. Sarah stepped forward, unable to stay quiet anymore. "You are making a terrible mistake. You do not understand what human faith really is." The aliens found this very funny. Their laughter filled the huge chamber, echoing off the walls and ceiling. The sound was horrible, like the screaming of metal being torn apart. "Poor little humans," said Elder Shardek. "Still believing in fairy tales." Robert felt something strange happening inside his chest. It was like a warm fire starting to burn. He had felt this feeling before, during the worst moments of his life, when everything seemed hopeless but he kept believing anyway. "Perhaps," Robert said very quietly, "you do not understand what it means when humans say they walk with their God." The laughter stopped suddenly. The chamber became so quiet that Emma could hear her own heartbeat. "What did you say?" Vextar demanded. "I said you do not understand. You think our God is imaginary because you cannot see him with your eyes or measure him with your machines. But that does not make him less real." The ethereal leader pulsed with angry red light. "Impossible. Things that cannot be measured do not exist." "Your science is not the only truth in the universe," Robert replied. His voice was getting stronger. "There are forces you have never learned to understand." Elder Shardek's crystal body made sharp, angry sounds. "You are proving our point. You live in a world of make-believe." "We live in a world where faith creates reality," Sarah said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them. The aliens laughed again, but this time the sound was not as sure. Something in the humans' voices made them feel uncomfortable, though they could not explain why. The negotiations ended badly. Robert and his team were told they had 7 days to surrender the Kepler system or face the consequences. As they prepared to leave, none of the aliens noticed the strange things happening around them. The crystal walls were humming very softly, too quietly for alien ears to hear. The air seemed thicker somehow, like it was full of invisible presence. The temperature in the chamber had dropped 3 degrees, and frost was forming on the metal railings. But the aliens were too busy feeling superior to notice these small signs. As the human ship left the station, Robert stood at the window and looked back at the glowing structure. Emma joined him there. "Sir, what will we do now?" she asked. "We will do what humans have always done when facing impossible odds," Robert said. "We will have faith and we will pray and we will trust that we do not walk alone." Behind them, the alien station grew smaller in the distance. Inside it, the three species congratulated themselves on handling the primitive humans so well. They had no idea that their mockery had awakened something that had been sleeping in the depths of space and time. Something that had been waiting for thousands of years for humanity to truly need its help. The war was about to begin, and the aliens were about to learn what happened when humans truly walked with their god. The first battle happened near the edge of the Kepler system, where a ring of asteroids floated like broken stones around the bright star. Captain Michael Davies stood on the bridge of his ship, the St. George, watching his computer screen show the enemy approaching. 12 human ships faced 37 alien vessels. The alien ships were bigger, faster, and had weapons that could destroy planets. The human ships looked like toys next to them. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Davies announced over the ship's radio. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly. "And all hands to prayer." Throughout the 12 human ships, soldiers and sailors stopped what they were doing and bowed their heads. Some knelt on the metal floors. Others simply closed their eyes where they stood. They prayed in whispers in dozens of different languages, but they all asked for the same thing. Corporal Thomas Bennett sat behind the big guns on the St. George. Sweat ran down his face as he watched the alien ships getting closer. His targeting computer showed red warnings everywhere. The enemy had too many ships, too much firepower. "Lord, guide my aim," he whispered, then pressed the firing button. Something impossible happened. His shots flew through space with perfect accuracy, hitting critical parts of enemy ships that should have been impossible to target. Each blast seemed to know exactly where to go, bending around obstacles and striking weak points that no human should have been able to see. "How did you do that?" shouted Sergeant Lisa Morgan from the gun next to him. She was firing too, and her shots were doing the same thing, finding targets with supernatural precision. "I don't know," Thomas replied, but he kept praying and kept firing. On the alien ships, commanders stared at their screens in confusion. Their battle computers had calculated an easy victory. The humans should have been destroyed in the first few minutes. Instead, every human shot was hitting exactly where it would do the most damage. "This is impossible," chittered Hive Subcommander Klextar to his crew. "Their weapons are primitive. How are they penetrating our shields?" The human ship Archangel was boarded by alien soldiers. They cut through the hull with energy weapons and poured into the corridors, ready to kill everyone inside. The ship's atmosphere was poisoned with alien gases that should have killed any human in seconds. Sergeant Lisa Morgan led her squad through the toxic air, wearing breathing masks that were only supposed to work for 10 minutes. They had been fighting for 30 minutes and somehow they were still alive and strong. "How are we still standing?" gasped Private David Taylor. His oxygen gauge showed empty, but he could still breathe. "Faith, son," Lisa replied. Her voice was steady and sure. "Someone's watching over us." They moved through the ship like ghosts, appearing where the aliens least expected them and disappearing before the enemy could react. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, as if they were all thinking with one mind. The alien boarding parties, who had conquered dozens of other species, found themselves being pushed back by humans who fought like they knew every move before it happened. On the bridge of the St. George, Captain Davies watched his ship take damage from enemy fire. Warning lights flashed red all around him. His engineers reported that the engines were failing, the weapons were offline, and the hull was cracked in 7 places. "Sir, we need to abandon ship," said his second-in-command. "We cannot survive another hit." Captain Davies looked around at his crew. They were young men and women who had families back on Earth and colonies throughout human space. They deserved to live, but there was nowhere to run. He dropped to his knees right there on the bridge. "Into thy hands I commend my spirit," he whispered. The alien ships fired their biggest weapons directly at the St. George. Energy beams hot enough to melt mountains struck the human ship. According to every law of physics, the ship should have been turned into dust. But it was not destroyed. The St. George flew out of the explosion completely unharmed. More than that, its weapons were working again, firing with incredible power at the surprised alien fleet. "What just happened?" asked the navigator, staring at his instruments in amazement. "A miracle," Captain Davies replied simply. Across the battlefield, similar impossible things were happening. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Human soldiers who should have been dead kept winning. Human weapons that should have been useless were cutting through alien defenses like they were made of paper. The alien commanders tried to understand what was happening, but their computers could not explain it. The humans were using the same technology they had always used, but somehow it was working far beyond its normal limits. "Retreat," ordered Hive Commander Vextar from his flagship. "All ships fall back and regroup." But it was too late. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, surrounding the alien fleet like they had planned this maneuver for years. Every human captain seemed to know exactly where to go and when to fire. The battle ended with 23 alien ships destroyed and the rest fleeing in panic. The humans had not lost a single vessel. As the alien survivors limped back to their bases, they sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council. Something was very wrong with their understanding of humanity. The humans were fighting with abilities that their technology could not explain. In the aftermath of the battle, the human crews gathered in their mess halls and chapels to give thanks. They had won an impossible victory, and they knew it was not because of their weapons or their training. They had fought alongside something greater than themselves, and that something had not let them down. The war had only just begun, but already the aliens were beginning to feel the first cold touch of fear. Admiral Patricia Stone stood in the command center on the moon, surrounded by glowing screens that showed battles happening across the galaxy. Each screen told the same impossible story. Human forces that should have been destroyed were winning against odds that made no sense. "Ma'am, you need to see this," called Commander William Price from his desk across the room. His voice was shaking with excitement and fear. Patricia walked over to look at his screen. It showed a live video feed from the Proxima system, where Captain Helen Brooks and her small fleet were surrounded by 50 alien warships. The human ships looked like tiny dots next to the massive alien vessels. "All ships, this is Admiral Brooks." Helen's voice came through the speakers clearly, even though she was millions of miles away. "We stand not alone but with the hosts of heaven. All hands prepare for divine intervention." Patricia frowned. Helen was a good captain, but this sounded like the words of someone who had given up hope. "How many ships does she have?" 3 destroyers and 1 cruiser, William replied. "Against 50 alien battleships." On the screen they watched the alien ships moving into attack formation. Their weapons powered up with bright flashes of light. Any moment now Helen's fleet would be vaporized. But something strange began to happen. The alien sensors detected massive energy readings appearing around the human ships. Not new vessels, not weapons, but something else entirely. The readings were so large they filled the sensor screens with warning signals. On the alien flagship, Crystalline Elder Shardex stared at his instruments in confusion. "What are those readings? They are impossible. Nothing can generate energy signatures that large." The patterns on his screen hurt to look at directly. They seemed to twist and bend in ways that made his crystal brain ache. The shapes were too complex, too perfect, like someone had drawn mathematics that should not exist. Hive Commander Vextar's 4 eyes could not process what his sensors were showing him. "Those readings, they are not ships. They are not technology. What are they?" The human ships began to move, but not like they were following any battle plan that the aliens had ever seen. They moved like dancers following music only they could hear. Each vessel took its position with perfect timing, forming patterns that seemed to resonate with power beyond understanding. Lieutenant Kevin Murphy sat at the sensor station aboard the destroyer Gabriel. He was a young man who had joined the Space Navy to see the stars, not to fight impossible battles. His instruments were showing readings that made no sense. "Captain, I'm detecting—" "I don't know how to describe it," he said to Captain Jennifer Walsh. "It's like there's something huge walking alongside our ships." Captain Walsh looked through the main window of the bridge. For just a moment she thought she saw something impossible. Shapes moving through space itself, tall figures of light and shadow that seemed to stride between the stars like giants walking through a garden. "Do you see them?" she whispered to her first officer. "See what, ma'am?" Jennifer blinked and the shapes were gone. But she could still feel them there, like a warm presence standing just behind her shoulder. Throughout the human fleet, crew members reported similar experiences. Some saw flashes of enormous wings spreading across space. Others heard voices singing in harmony too beautiful for human ears. A few swore they felt gentle hands guiding their controls. The alien fleet opened fire with everything they had. Hundreds of energy beams and missile strikes launched simultaneously. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The attacks reached the human ships and simply stopped. Energy beams that could melt planets struck invisible barriers and faded away like candle flames in the wind. Missiles that could crack asteroids exploded harmlessly against shields that should not have existed. The human ships sat in the middle of the firestorm, completely unharmed. "Impossible!" screamed Elder Shardak. Our weapons are striking something, but our sensors show nothing there. When the aliens stopped firing in shock and confusion, the humans returned fire. But their weapons carried more than plasma and metal projectiles. Each shot seemed to carry the focused will of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and believed they were not alone. Human weapons that normally could barely scratch alien armor now tore through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Each blast found its target with impossible accuracy, striking exactly where it would do the most damage. The alien fleet began to break apart. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were destroyed by weapons that should have been toys to them. Retreat. All ships retreat. Vextar ordered, his voice high with panic. As the alien survivors fled, they left behind 27 destroyed ships and a mystery they could not solve. The humans had fought with abilities that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about the universe. Back on the moon, Admiral Patricia Stone watched the impossible victory with tears in her eyes. She had been in the military for 30 years and she had never seen anything like this. "How many battles have we won today?" she asked Commander Price. 17, ma'am. In every engagement, human forces have achieved victory against overwhelming odds. Patricia nodded slowly. She was a practical woman who believed in training, equipment, and tactics. But she was also a woman who had been raised to say her prayers every night before bed. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," she said quietly. "Tell them to prepare for the final push to the alien home systems. And tell them we do not go alone." In the depths of space, the surviving alien ships raced back to their bases with news that would terrify the Galactic Council. Humanity was not fighting with superior technology or greater numbers. They were fighting with something the aliens had forgotten how to understand, something they had dismissed as primitive superstition. They were fighting with faith made manifest, with belief given form and power. The aliens were about to learn what happened when humans truly walked with their gods. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council happened in the deepest part of their great space station. The three alien leaders sat in a room with no windows, surrounded by walls covered in computer screens showing the disasters happening across their empire. Crystalline Scanner Prime Lenzake stood before the council, his diamond body shaking like he was afraid. His voice made sad, broken sounds as he spoke. 17 battle zones, he reported. In every single fight, human forces have won against impossible odds. Their weapons are showing power levels that are 10 times stronger than their technology should allow. Hive Commander Vextar's 4 eyes darted back and forth as he read report after report. His insect-like body clicked nervously. This cannot be true. Humans use primitive weapons. How are they destroying our best ships? Ethereal high-consciousness Fluxera pulsed with colors that showed fear and confusion. We detected massive entity signatures during the Proxima battle. Beings of impossible size walking in space itself. Our instruments could barely register them, and when they tried, the machines started to break. Elder Shardik made a sound like wind chimes falling downstairs. "Show us the recordings again." The screens around the room lit up with battle footage. They watched human ships moving with perfect coordination, their weapons hitting targets they should not have been able to see. They saw energy patterns that hurt to look at directly, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should have. But most terrifying of all, they saw the shadows. In the space around human ships, their instruments had detected massive figures. Beings so large that a human battleship looked like a toy next to their hands. The figures appeared to be walking through space itself, their hands resting protectively on human vessels. "What are they?" whispered Vextar. "We do not know," Fluxera admitted. "They register on our sensors as both there and not there at the same time. They are real, but they exist in ways our science cannot explain." Far away, in the depths of space, Captain Richard Stone commanded the final human attack on the alien stronghold. His fleet of 40 ships faced the aliens' last great fortress, a massive structure that housed their military headquarters. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Mary Johnson from her position at the sensor station. "The alien fleet is retreating. All of them. They're abandoning their own headquarters." Richard smiled, his hand touching the small wooden cross pinned to his uniform. "They're finally beginning to understand what they're really fighting." Throughout his fleet, human crews prepared for what might be their final battle. But they did not feel afraid. They felt something they had carried with them from Earth, something that had sustained their species through thousands of years of struggle and hope. They felt the presence of something greater than themselves. In the council chamber, the alien leaders watched their greatest fortress fall without a single shot being fired. Their fleets ran away rather than face human ships that fought with impossible power. "How did this happen?" Elder Shardik asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We made a mistake," Fluxera said slowly. We assumed that belief in the unseen was a weakness. We thought that faith was the same as delusion. Vextar's mandibles clicked together nervously. But their gods are not real. We proved this with science. We measured everything. We found nothing. Perhaps, said a new voice, you were measuring the wrong things. The three alien leaders turned to see Ambassador Robert Chin entering their chamber. Behind him walked Dr. Sarah Williams and Lieutenant Emma Walsh. The humans looked tired but determined. How did you get past our guards? Vextar demanded. Your guards saw us coming and stepped aside, Robert replied calmly. I think they have learned to respect what walks with humanity. Elder Shardek's crystal body rang with angry sounds. Your ships carry unknown weapons. Your soldiers use technology we cannot identify. Tell us your secrets. Robert shook his head. We carry no secret weapons. Our soldiers use the same equipment they always have. The difference is not in our technology. Then what? Fluxera pulsed with desperate colors. The difference is that we do not walk alone, Sarah said simply. When we told you that humans walk with their God, you laughed. You said our faith was imaginary. Robert stepped closer to the alien leaders. What you did not understand is that faith, when it is real and strong and shared by billions of people, becomes something more than belief. It becomes power. Impossible, Vextar chittered. Things that cannot be measured do not exist. Your measuring tools are not advanced enough, Emma said quietly. You can measure matter and energy, but you cannot measure love. You cannot measure hope. You cannot measure the prayers of 2 billion humans asking for protection. The screens around the room flickered, showing the final human victory. The alien fortress surrendered without resistance. Across 17 systems, alien forces laid down their weapons rather than face human fleets that fought with divine assistance. We surrender, Elder Shardek said, his voice broken and defeated. We cannot fight beings we cannot understand. Robert nodded. The war is over. But the question now is whether we can build a peace. What are your terms? Vextar asked. Full membership in the Galactic Council, Robert replied. As equal partners, not as subjects. And respect for all species' beliefs, no matter how strange they might seem to you. The alien leaders looked at each other. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had never faced anything like humanity. A species that turned faith into reality, belief into power. Agreed, they said together. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Fluxera asked one final question. Will you teach us? Will you show us how to believe the way you do? Robert smiled. Faith cannot be taught like science. It must be felt, experienced, lived. But if you truly wish to learn, we will try to show you. The humans walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind 3 alien species who were just beginning to understand that the universe was far more mysterious and wonderful than their science had ever told them. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through superior technology or greater intelligence, but through the simple, profound power of faith. The aliens had trembled when humans walked with their gods. Now they would learn to walk alongside them.